All right, so we're gonna continue on from the previous video talking about my first job working at Levi's. So after I left Levi's, I went into right here, H&M. I went into H&M. Now, I worked at Levi's. If you guys haven't seen the video, definitely check it out because it's going to be a continuation from where I last left off from Levi's. So after that, then I went into working at H&M. So I talked about that in the video, how one of my supervisors that used to work at Levi's ended up working at H&M, and he was a manager. He had a managerial role as well there. So he kind of gave me the connection, right? So this is Stylo Convo, where I'm able to just draw and talk to you guys, with a stylo, which is a pen. French, I guess English is pretty much called pen. So I'm drawing with a ballpoint pen, right? And just all out of my head about what I went through in terms of H&M, and before was what I went through working at Levi's. So let's talk about H&M. So when it came down to H&M, it's crazy because I thought that because of my previous job working at Levi's, and at this time I started to spend a lot of money. So I got from before I used to never really buy anything, right? So it was just hand-me-downs from my brothers older than me. Never really bought my own type of apparel until I worked at Levi's. And while I was working at Levi's, I used to always go to H&M. And because it was cheap, but they had really cool looking garments at a cheap price. So I would go there over and over and over. I mean, this is the time I used to dorm in college. I would spend damn near $200 on H&M clothes. And some of it was cheap, and then they also had I guess you call it the higher end versions. I mean, it's still cheap compared to high end brand, higher end brands like Banana Republic. But at the same time, it's it adds up. Even though you're getting basics, basics is pretty much basic clothes that they have there available. But it still adds up if you buy 5, 6, 7, 8 garments. And I was buying them over and over. I'll go in there, but oh, this looks good on me. And I'll just buy it, and then I'll do it again. Oh, this looks good, and I'll buy it. And it's gotten to the point where it's wait a minute, I literally just bought pretty much the same garment. There's no difference between this apparel and that apparel. But that was one of my issues when it came down to H&M. As far as me going on a shopping spree, and that was before I was working at H&M. So anyway, so let's get right into it. So when it came down to H&M, it happened out of randomness because one of my managers that used to work at Levi's, I just saw him and I was like, oh shoot, you work at H&M? He's like, yeah, I've been working for a couple of months or whatever. And I'm like, oh, well, honestly, I'm getting really tired of working at Levi's. You don't mind if you can, give me a recommendation, or a connection so I could work here. He said, yeah, I got you, no problem. So at this time I was working at Levi's for 2 years, and I'm like, you know what, I need to get out of here. So then they immediately set me up. It didn't even take too long. So they set me up on an interview, right? And the main reason why I wanted to leave is because I got tired of working at Levi's in terms of always going up to customers, talking to customers. And I'm and every time I go to H&M, you just don't see that. You just don't see employees go up to customers. The customers go up to the employees if they need some help. Other than that, it's not mandatory because the store sells itself because the brand, everyone knows about it. I'm like, oh, this should be easy, right? Easy. It should be easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? Oh, we got to get into that. So they put me in this interview. They got me interview with one of the head managers, right? And this one was different. It was the opposite of Levi's. So Levi's was a group interview, but H&M was not. It was a one-on-one interview, which honestly, so much easier. And at the same time, you know, my manager that used to be a manager at Levi's, he already put in a good word. So it was a layup, honestly. Like, it was the opposite of Levi's, where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to get this job. It's a group interview. I never worked a day in my life. That was my first ever job that I ever worked at in general. Towards this one, where it's like, okay, now I have a resume underneath my belt for 2 years, you know, working at Levi's. And sorry about that. My voice for some reason is acting up. So yeah, so it's funny because like I also was applying for like Bloomingdale's, and that one was horrible. Long story short, well, I ain't gonna make it a long story, but you know, with that one, it's a higher end, so I wore a suit, because you had to wear a suit going there. And there was a group interview, and somebody, there was this one girl there that's like, yeah, this is like my third time I'm applying for this job. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, jeez Louise. And I think it was like $12, and it was a big amount. I mean, mind you, at this time, you know, like now it's like $18 an hour, $20 an hour, whatever, for minimum wage. But at this time, I was like, whoa. But yeah, so I went there, and I don't like wearing suits. I'm be honest with you. I'm not comfortable wearing suits. So I was really just like, I was uncomfortable, honestly. I was really uncomfortable with literally just me just wearing a suit and going on an interview. I just felt so stiff. Felt really, really stiff. I mean, I think also the clothes didn't help either, because the clothes was stiff as well. Maybe just, again, I didn't have the money to have anything tailor made. This is like H&M white collar shirt and the H&M blazer. So yeah, it was stiff. So I was very uncomfortable. And then when I was there, you know, we had the AC on blast there, so I was cold. Whenever I feel stiff and I feel cold, I just don't have that flexible comfortability to just like really talk, right? So that's that. And everybody was killing it, right? Well, not everybody, but majority of people was answering the question like in spades as far as like the group interview at Bloomingdale's. And for me, I remember, I don't know what question they asked, but they said something, and just like with Levi's, everything was like one by one by one by one, right? So it's like, okay, now you answer it. Okay, now you answer. Okay, now you answer. So when it was my turn, so when it was my turn, I answered it, and you know what she said? Think again. What? Like I was so confused. Think again. You asked the question. I gave you an answer to my best of my abilities, and she said, think again. There are moments in life where you could just tell from the writing on the wall. Like there are moments where you don't even need to have the person tell you didn't get the job. You could just tell from that split second that you did not get the job. So when she said think again, it just got me like, yeah, I'm done. I'm not getting this job. I'm definitely not getting this job. That's it. Yep, I ain't getting this job. So, guess what? I didn't get the job at Bloomingdale's. And the crazy part about it was, like, moments not too after, I'll say a couple of days later, that's when I, because I used to, again, shop a lot of H&M, and that's how I bumped into my manager, and that's how he was able to get me the job at H&M. But yeah, I'm telling you, man, I felt disrespected, because I was like, in Bloomingdale's, it's like I was the only, in the interview, I was the only one that got that response of think again. I was like, wow, what do you think again? It's not like she wanted me to respond again. Why? What type of condescending, arrogant responses? Think again. Like, think again. Oh man, I'm telling you, man. In my life, a lot of times I had the short end of the stick, man. A lot of times, but again, like this time working at H&M, that things happen for a reason, right? So in H&M, it was different. It was definitely different compared to Levi's, because with H&M, number one, the store sells itself, right? It sells itself, and number two is that the area is bigger, right? So the area, the environment itself is bigger, where it has a couple of floors. Levi's didn't have a couple of floors. When I worked at Levi's, there was only just one floor. It wasn't as big. H&M was huge. It was huge. It was it was two. I think it was it was 2 floors, but it was a lot. It's a big store. And the thing about H&M is that they will make you rotate. So it'll make you do a little bit of everything, and whenever you're really good at something, they kind of push you there more compared to the other areas, right? Unlike Levi's, they'll just keep you as a sales associate. So they just kept me as sales associate in Levi's. But H&M, they actually will rotate you. Now, here's another thing about H&M. Majority of the time, you gotta be pacing yourself and be quick, right? So there's a lot of different garments that needs to be in certain areas. However, it was difficult to figure out where, in terms of the section, where it needs to be. So you're like, huh? Like, do I put it here? Do I put it there? They're like, no, divided red is gonna be here. Basics and black is gonna be here. Yeah, but I'm in the section, but I don't know exactly where it needs to be, because everything is like hanged up and it cluttered together. So it will cause a lot of like wasting time of you trying to figure out where this garment needs to go, where that garment needs to go, where this garment needs to go. And you'll just constantly get confused. And at that time, again, you're just wasting so much time. And I remember, like, even my first or second day of working there, mind you, they did pay more, a little bit more. And then when you clock in, you got to clock in with a hand scan, right? It's like, okay, that's different compared to Levi's. I know I didn't cover this when I worked the previous video, but yeah, working at Levi's, you had to first go downstairs and then drop your outerwear, which is like your jacket, whatever, and then you clock in on this computer where the cashier is next to, and the manager will be next to that. So there's times where it's like people just clock in right there where you're not supposed to, and the manager's like, no, you got to go downstairs and change to your employee outfit first. I'm like, what? Like, I'm about to run late. I don't care. You got to go downstairs. So I forgot to mention that. But in H&M, it's like you just got to do a hand scan. You got to do a hand scan. So they had that. That was futuristic for me. I was like, I've never seen a hand scan before. I was like, oh, okay, that's different. So you hand scan and it'll automatically tell you, like, okay, you clocked in at this time. Okay. So that's another difference. And then also, like I said, it's so confusing. Like, so you're not a sales associate there. You are, I think it's called sell advisor. They just be making up these damn names. Sales associate. No, you're a sell advisor. You're a sell this. I'm not selling anything. Literally, when you work there, you're just maintaining the store. That's all you're doing. You're just making sure that the area does not look bad, right? Because everything in retail is based on optics. So if the place looks like it got hit by a tornado and there's garments all over the floor, the likelihood of customers picking up a garment and buying the garment is close to none. Like, the likelihood of that happening is not happening, right? Just because optically people are not going to buy something from the floor, right? Especially if something looks messy. So if the place looked like a train wreck, optically you're gonna feel like, yeah, I'm not gonna buy this. But at the same time, the same people who don't want it are the same people who are causing it to happen. So it's like that weird catch-22. It's like these people are making it look like this, right? The customers, because they're trying to find their garment, right? They're trying to find what they want, and they're constantly trying it on. And then they don't want it, then they throw it back or whatever. But then at the same time, they don't want it if the place looks like a train wreck. So that's where we got to come in to do like maintenance, right? So they'll rotate me and everybody else who works there. So they'll first have you, they'll have you in the typical, like put you in this one section where you got to constantly maintain your section, and then go to the fitting room and pick up the stuff where the customers didn't want this garment, so you got to pick that up and put it back where it needs to be, and blah blah blah, over and over and over. Or they'll have a runner who will do that for you. They'll just come in with a whole bunch of clothing racks that you got to figure out where you got to put each of those to the appropriate area over and over. That's literally what you have to do. And then they'll rotate you. Now, this is where I realized that I was wrong. I learned the hard way. I guess I'm hard-headed. I learned the hard way a lot in life, right? So remember I told you about how like, oh, this should be easy, right? Because it's not like Levi's where you have to sell the garments, right? Sell the jeans, sell the apparel. You're mainly selling. Well, at H&M, you don't have to sell anything. However, with H&M, things get messed up a lot. And since they rotate you, the most difficult part of it about H&M is, to me, when I worked there years ago, was the fitting room. The fitting room was by far the worst ever. It was terrible. You're like doing two things at once. And let me explain why. Now in the morning, it's easy. It's very easy in the morning because there's not too many people there, right? There's not too many people there in the morning. However, when it comes down to the afternoon, there's a lot of, because I was downstairs. They didn't have me upstairs is men, downstairs is women. They had me downstairs the whole time, right? Majority of the time. Once in a while they have me in the men's section, which they're easier because men we don't see with our hands, right? We see with what we see, and then we put things back. Women are different. They see with their hands and they'll destroy things, turn it inside out, and then they'll just leave. So I noticed that a lot of times in the fitting room, women will go inside, right? And you got to do it 7 at a time. Why? Because if you allow them to go in there with 20 items, there's a chance that they're trying to steal. And they have this guy who worked there. I guess he's like a vendor or whatever in H&M, where he tracks down people who are trying to steal in the store. So he has like, surveillance, cameras, right? They got hidden cameras or whatever. They can't. It's illegal to have hidden cameras in the fitting room. So it's up to us in the fitting room to make sure no one's trying to steal anything, right? So 7 items is maximum. So if someone comes in, this is where things get annoying. If someone comes in, which this happens a lot, with 20 items that they want to try on, you have to sort it out, put the rest of the 13 items on the side, right next to you in the fitting room, while they try on the first 7. Then they come out and they'll tell you, well, I don't want none of these, because that happens a lot. I don't want none of these first 7 items. So you're like, what? Okay. And then they'll have them inside out. And I used to have an attitude with that. I was like, can you please, put it back where it needs to be, as far as like not having the garment inside out. Can you put it back how it's supposed to be so I could take it from you? Because it feels kind of weird that I got to go through the garment with your, especially jeans, right? And I could feel the warmth of the body warmth of what they wore, and putting it back from inside out back to where it needs to be. So that feels kind of weird, right? So I just tell them, can you just do that yourself? And they'll catch an attitude like, can't you just do this? I'm in a hurry. I gotta go. It's like, oh, now you're in a hurry. You just came in with like 50 items. How are you in a hurry all of a sudden? fine. They just get mad, say fine. Like I'm telling you, adults and children are not far from each other. It's almost as if I'm their parents telling you to clean up your room. Fine. Gosh. So then they just, they easily just do that. One of them tossed it at me like, take that. I'm like, wow. It's not that serious. It's just items. Like, why are you... Anyway, that didn't normally happen. They'll just catch an attitude, but they'll just do what they, ask you to do. But yeah, so this is why it's hell on earth, because the simple fact that while that's going on, there are other women waiting in line, and H&M employees do not like that. The managers do not like when they don't mind the cashier, because they're gonna wait to get the for the items to be purchased. If it's too long of a line, they'll tell them go upstairs, we'll just open up another register. It's not a big deal, right? They won't tell you to speed it up that fast, because you're dealing with money. You don't want to give them the wrong amount, right? But fitting room, they care a lot about that. Why? Because they want them to have a smooth transition of trying on the item and then leave. But if they're waiting in line too long, they might be impatient and be like, you know what, I'm just gonna leave. And now that's a loss of money. So they get really upset. They're like, oh, okay, you gotta speed it up. You gotta let them go in. So then there's times where the rooms are filled up, right? But then you in the fitting room gotta move faster. As far as like, okay, give them the other 7 items, and then give them the other set of 7 items. Okay. And then while you're doing that, and they're gonna give you the items that they don't want, now you gotta sort out where you gotta put them for the runners who are gonna pick up the items and put it in the section where it needs to be. So you gotta deal with that as well. So you're literally multitasking, dealing with the customers, going inside the fitting room and counting the 7 items, while simultaneously when the customers come out, they don't want none of the items. They gotta take those items, and each of those you gotta sort it out to the appropriate section for the runners to put it where it needs to be. And then the runners, who are the ones who just drop it off in the section, right? Sometimes they multitask if no one's there. They'll take it, they'll put it in the section, and all the garments that's in that clothing rack, they're gonna sort it out accordingly, right? Now, some of them, they get upset because like, hey, you just put this garment, this is not in my section, this is in her section. It's like, my bad, like I'm multitasking here, I'm dealing with these customers. So you catching the attitude with, well, you gotta get an attitude with them H&M employees. At the same time, you get an attitude with the customers as well. And you get an attitude with yourself because you're like, why did you even choose this job? Because I was getting that feeling. I was like, why? I thought this would be easy. Now, to be fair, when they push you in the cashier position, right? Because they rotate you. I was scared at first. Like, oh my God, I don't want to work in no. I've never done any cashier. Like, what if I give them the wrong amount? But funny enough, cashier is actually the easiest one. Cashier is so easy. It's so quick. It's so straight to the point, and time flies by. It's like, at first, yeah, it's nerve-wracking because, I never done it before. But the moment you get used to it, man, I love the cashier. It was so easy. And time flies by compared to the other areas, especially like the worst area was the fitting room. Cashier was the best. It was the best area. And then second place from that is actually working in stock. Stock was the second best. Why? Because you don't deal with customers. You're downstairs in the basement area just having, listening to music, and then just having conversations with your employees and just talking about life. It was just cool, man. We just talk about what we go through in life, and we're just chilling. But there was times where it could be a bit annoying because we'll get new inventory, so then we gotta go outside. Sometimes it'll be raining, sometimes it'll be snowing, and we just gotta go out there. It's all mustied up outside and just deal with unloading all of the new garments, and they have them in these boxes, these big boxes that we gotta keep going back and forth. So that was annoying. As well as with stock, if you open the store at H&M, it opened at like 7 a.m. Like something, I remember it was extremely early. It was so early. So that's one thing I didn't like about stock, is that sometimes they'll make you come in for stock that you gotta open. So you gotta wake up super early in the morning, and I had to take the train going all the way there, mad early in the morning, and then just deal with like tagging the new items that came in. So you gotta keep tagging them in, tag, and sort them out. Tagging, sorting. But the good news about really early in the morning is that you leave early. So yeah, you wake up super early, like ugh, but you end up leaving like around 1 p.m. So the day just started, like, so you leave at the peak of the day. Like, it's always that good feeling where you're able to get out and it's sunshine, like it's like nice bright as day. You're able to still like do other stuff, and you got paid that day as well. It's a good feeling, you know. Or not really, like I just still like go on campus and just like, you know, work on projects I gotta work on, study and all that stuff. So it was a good multitask in terms of like you know, leaving early in the morning. It just sucked waking up early in the morning. So that's that. But yeah, H&M, I was there for like a year. Almost a year. And then I ended up getting a different job afterwards. Let me add more stuff. I think because I've been doing more talking than drawing. But yeah, like, let me add like a disco ball or something. Oh yeah, I forgot about closing hours. All right, so speaking of closing, H&M wasn't as bad as Levi's as far as closing. Closing in H&M was easier, honestly, because with Levi's, we had to get out at 2 a.m. Sometimes it'll be even longer just because the place got trashed up. So we have to like stay longer. That sucked. H&M, it was more like we got out, I believe, if I'm mistaken, we got out at around 11. Midnight, the latest. We never stood there past midnight. So that was a good thing about working there. I didn't have to deal with staying there too long. But it still was a lot of work, you know. But they wasn't too anal when it came down to like, oh, this section needs to be perfect. It was mainly like, okay, it's decent. All right, we gotta go. Like everything was like, we gotta go. Because I guess with them, their policy, I guess, was like, you have to leave at this time. We don't have any wiggle room with allowing people to stay if the place is still insufficient. They're like, nah, you know what? They would be like, okay, we'll just leave it up for the morning crew to go in here and fix it. So it was more like that. So it was a bit more flexible with the closing hours. However, the one thing about H&M that I never liked at all was the simple fact that like the place got trashed up, man. It got trashed. Like, so let's say, for example, you know, you're in your section, right? And you're constantly fixing everything, putting everything where it needs to be. And you organize everything, right? You fixed it up, you did what you need to do, you maintained it, you didn't have any problems, you know, you did what you had to do. And then all of a sudden, you know, you go on your break, you go on your hour break. Actually, no, I believe in H&M was a 30-minute break. That sucked. It was a 30-minute break, right? So it's quick. It's really quick. It's a quick break. You don't really have like an actual break. So it's just there just to eat quick, and then you go back into the hellhole. So the thing about that is you'll go back, or you'll come back, and it's the complete opposite of the way you had it. Everything is trashed up. Everything is literally the opposite of how you had it. And there's no one there who's covering for you, unlike Levi's, right? When you take a break, someone's covering your section. There, no one's covering you. So the place is, of course, going to get trashed up. So you go from it's looking good, you maintain it, towards what just happened? Like, how did this happen? What, when, where, why? You're just doing the who, what, when, where, why. Like, And you're just looking around like, I remember when that happened a few times. I mean, it happened so many times. But there was one time one of my managers saw that and they just laughed. And the laughter wasn't like it's funny. The laughter was more like, yeah, I get it. This comes with the territory. It's like, how come nobody can cover this? Like, why? So then you just gotta go through the same process. Now you're stressed out. So that's one thing. Well, that's one of the main things that I definitely noticed, where I did not pay attention when I was working at Levi's, and I looked at the opportunity for H&M. I was thinking, oh, you don't gotta deal with customers. You just fix up garments. That should be easy. Wrong. It's not. It's not as the whole display and layout is not as intuitive as people think it is. It's not as intuitive because there's so much clothing racks that you forget where it's like, oh, dang, I didn't know this was right here. So you will spend so long on that, and then you got so many items in the fitting room that you gotta put back. So it's definitely nerve-wracking to say the least. But it did pay more. And here's one thing I would want to say that I never went through. This is my first time. And this is one thing that was really annoying, that I never knew I had to go through working at H&M. And that was the payroll. So yes, even though they will pay you, the amount per hour. However, this is my first job where you had to monitor, right? You had to monitor your schedule and your hours. Why? Because this is the first time what I went through where the job did not pay you sufficiently. They purposely, I don't know if it was purposely, but they did not pay you the right amount all the time. So you gotta double check and literally check your hours and do the calculation yourself to make your appeal and let them know, hey, I didn't get paid correctly. You paid me less than what I was owed. I've never went through that working at Levi's. I thought, hey, it's not my job to monitor, like it's your job, right? With the ADP or whatever type of platform that they're using to make sure you're paying the employees correctly. But no, this job was notorious for cutting corners, so to speak. And it's weird because everything was high tech as far as like you gotta scan your hand to clock in. I was like, oh, that's pretty high tech. But yet it's low tech if you're unable to give the sufficient amount of funds or the amount of money that the employee is owed based upon the hours that they put in the work in. So there's times where I have to double check, like, wait, I'm missing like 2 days of work. And if you don't say nothing about it, well, you literally got paid nothing. So they literally had you work for free for 2 days. So that was rather annoying that you have to like not only deal with a lot of stuff at work, like deal with customers and sometimes employees, but then you got to deal with the check issue. And you got to keep going back and forth. Like, okay, let me just make sure they paid me the right amount. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that. I don't think anybody would be a fan of that. But that was the first time I ever went through that, working at H&M. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna leave here, keep it simple. This one's not gonna be as long as Levi's. But that was pretty much what I went through working at H&M. They had more cons than pros. I mean, none of these retail jobs I will ever want to go back. I mean, it's just, that was a different era when I was in college, many years ago. And I needed the experience, I needed the money. And Levi's has its pros and cons. but H&M definitely got a lot of pros and cons. It definitely was stressful in terms of the fitting room, and it was stressful in terms of trying to figure out where the garments need to be, and you got to be moving quick. Even though you're not selling anything, but you got to move quick as far as maintaining. Cashier area was pretty straightforward, easiest part. Stock can be easy at times, but then there's times where it could be a bit annoying. But all in all, H&M definitely was in the annoying category, just like Levi's. So that's my experience of Storytime, I guess, of when I was working at H&M. Again, I was only working there for like almost a year, and then I left to a different job. So that's that. Don't forget to like the video, all right? And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Stay tuned for the next video, all right? I'm out of here. Bye-bye.